Good afternoon, everyone. I pray that your Tuesday you found spaces and places to move your body. I don't care if you danced, if you um, took a walk, if you jogged, if you decided to do a workout, if you did yoga, if you just did some deep breathing, if you just stretched. I pray that you found a space or place yesterday to just move your body. As our lives have become changed and we find ourselves sort of social distancing, our level of activity probably has gone down. And so I encourage you to make it a point to do something physical, at least for some period. They suggest for at least 30 minutes on a regular basis. Your body will thank you for it. So today we are continuing our talk about toxic relationships. And I just want to re-emphasize that if you are a survivor of a trauma, if you are a survivor of a trauma that may have occurred during childhood or maybe as an adult, it can result in some very specific behaviors that can negatively impact relationships if we're not mindful about it. And I want to add that, yes, these behaviors can manifest, but yes, as a trauma survivor, you can be in relationship, but just pay attention to what may be more challenging for you. Pay attention to where you may be placing your energies. Pay attention to who you may be choosing. Pay attention to how you may be perceiving conversations when in relationship. Yesterday, I told you I was doing this from a list, which is beside me on the screen, and it's called Unhealed Childhood Trauma Manifest as. Yesterday, we talked about fixing others, having the need to be so controlling that we have to make people into what we want them to be. And today, we're going to talk about people pleasing. And you may say, well, I thought we were talking about toxic relationships. Well, we are talking about toxic relationships, but the reality is the one thing consistently that we bring into all of our relationships is ourselves. And if you have sustained a trauma, you're bringing your whole self, but a part of your whole self includes the portion that has developed some challenging survival skills that help to, as far as you're concerned, keep you safe, but may not necessarily have the best impact on relationship. And that doesn't mean that you are the toxic person in the relationship, but it means that you may be bringing some level of your own toxicity and attracting people who either prey on survivors or people who have equal toxic things in their lives that they need to deal with. And so we're going to talk about people pleasing, wanting people to like us, doing things that we don't necessarily want to do or care to do, but we do it because we want people to think highly of us. Some of you all have made a lifetime of doing that. You chose a person or your partner not because you were so much in love with them, because love does involve trust, but because you want to please your parents, who may have been saying, it's about time you got married, or that girl is a great girl, or that guy is a great guy. You may have wanted to please your friends. Your friends some of you may have been going through a season where it all seemed like everybody you knew was getting married. And you were seeing a guy and it was okay. Or you were seeing a girl and, it'll do. But because you felt so much pressure, you felt a desire to people please, you went on ahead and committed and soon found out that this was more than what you had bargained for. Things were not necessarily going the way it seemed to be for everybody else on social media. People pleasing can start off really, really young, because whether a child has been traumatized or not, the most important persons in their lives tend to be their parents or their caregivers. And children have an innate need. They're very egocentric. They believe the world revolves around them. What I want, what I need, needs to happen above everything else. And that's true for when they're babies because they can't do anything for themselves. But another trait that children have for their caregivers, for their parents, is they want to please them. They want their caregivers to be proud of them. And this can be very, very healthy to some degree when the child is able, when the parent is forthcoming and gives compliments and is supportive. But it can be quite challenging for children where parents are struggling with their own deficiencies and seem to never notice just what a wonderful person you are, no matter what you do. And so those children grow up and they're continuing to seek approval from someone else. They're continuing to define how they feel about themselves based on the response that they get from someone else. So they become people pleasers. They may be involved with their running buddies, whether it's your best girlfriends or your best boyfriends, and they, may, simple example, they say, well, where are we gonna go to eat? And they pick a restaurant that you don't really care for, that it's not really your top choice, but you go anyway because you don't want to make any waves. You don't want to upset anyone. You don't want to draw any attention to yourself. And this may continue to go on. And then what happens is there's a chance that if you continue to agree to do things that you don't really want to do, but you're only doing to people please, there's a chance that there could be a low simmering resentment that is slowly building up. It's slowly building up. And when you finally explode, when you finally go off, no one really knows where that's coming from because all along it seemed as if this is what you really wanted. Another way that people pleasing shows up is doing for people the things that you want done for you, and then becoming very resentful if they don't do this, if they don't reciprocate, if they don't do things for you. And the child, and I think on one instance, that's probably a reciprocity can be very strengthening for relationships. You never want a relationship to consistently be one-sided, but a great deal of what happens when you're focused on people pleasing, when you're focused on trying to get people to like you, trying to get people to do something that you want, the challenge is, sometimes you need to tell people. Sometimes you just can't expect that people will understand that, well, if you cook and you bring their plate to the table, that they may think that that's the pattern. That's what we should be doing. They feel like you're treating them like the king or queen that you have made them out to be. But deep down inside, you may be resenting it, thinking, when are they going to bring a plate for me? When are they going to do something for me? But the challenge is you have not told them. You have not shared with them what you would like. You have not shared with them what makes your heart sing. You have not shared with them what makes you feel special. And so what I want you to think about is how, if this relates to you, how might you have been trying to get someone's attention? What have you been doing? How have you possibly been guilty of people pleasing, agreeing to do things that you don't really want to do, agreeing to go places you really don't want to go, agreeing to behave and to participate in activities that's really not your cup of tea, but you didn't want to rock the boat. And I want to add, for children particularly who've been traumatized, the idea of not rocking the boat has a large emotional content to it. Some of you grew up in households where, if your parent or caregiver wasn't pleased, that could make for a really challenging time. You could have been harmed physically. You could have been the recipient of being cursed out or being told that you are no good or having derogatory things said to you. So you focused really hard in trying to keep that most important parent, that caregiver happy. And it seems like everything you did failed. Well, the reason why it probably failed is because that parent, that caregiver who you were so desperately trying to please, probably had their own emotional wounds that they were not aware of, that they needed healing from. And so you grew up within that dynamic, and now that you're an adult, you're continuing the pattern of trying to prove your worthiness by pleasing others, by trying to feel a sense of competence by doing for others. And again, there is nothing wrong with doing for others. We are called to be compassionate. We are called to be empathetic. We are called to help each other. But we need to check our motives. Are we doing it because we sincerely want to be able to pour into someone else's life? Are we doing it without any expectations? Or are we doing it simply because we are people pleasing and that's how we get our own validation? I want to end by saying that you are worthy, you are enough. You don't have to prove yourself to anyone. Even if you never did another thing, you are enough. You are more than enough. So I would invite you to pay attention to where you may have some unmet needs that you are trying to inevitably meet through people pleasing, through trying to be that one who can always be counted on, that one who will always show up, that one that people can always get a word or whatever from, but deep down inside, you're feeling empty, your needs are not getting met because you're so focused on fulfilling the needs and desires of someone else, even when they have not asked. And we will continue with that in another couple of days. But right now, I would invite you to think about, are you a people pleaser? And what does it give you? And I invite you to do that on purpose and with intention. I will talk with you tomorrow. Love you. Bye-bye.